Hello everyone, welcome to the second edition of the Gurumantra podcast. And here is your Guru Kumar. Today we have a special student guest speaker, Shrey Sharma, who scored 7 points in ESS and 39 points in the final IB score. Shrey, welcome to the Gurumantra podcast and please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Thank you, Guru sir. It's an honor to be here. My name is Shrey Sharma. As you know, I scored a 39 in the IB and I scored a 7 in ESS. A little bit about myself. I'll tell you about where I'm going to university. So I'll be going to university in Sciences Po, France, which is basically a college that specializes in the social sciences, and the major that I'll be pursuing is international relations. Some hobbies that I used to concern myself with in school include debate and basketball. I was a captain of both in high school, and that's where I spend most of my time.
Listeners, before we go to ask the question to Shrey Sharma, a small tidbit. Shrey is a very good public speaking person, and you will see his answer to his public speaking skill. Shrey, we will go some of the question first for the ESS paper 1. Can you tell how did you manage your time during the ESS paper 1, especially considering the last 6 mark questions?
Sure, sir. So regarding paper 1, I think Guru sir's advice to use technical terminology and to not overwrite is very important.
Can you tell how did you manage your time during the ESS paper 1, considering the last question which carries a 6 mark?
Yes, sir. So I think your advice to use technical terminology was what helped me save time while writing my answers, because I did have a way of overwriting every single question. So even if you gave me a 1 marker, I used to end up writing so much more than was necessary. And I think both my ESS teachers, Shiva ma'am and Guru sir, both advised me that there are very small bubbles for each question in the paper 1, and that's for a reason, because they're trying to assess whether the learner has grasped the concept and is able to answer and interpret the answers correctly. So if you're stuck, you can always move on since there is less time. I think it's more important to allocate time to the later questions, which are the 6 markers, for example. I used to always start from the 6 marker only because I used to get more time in order to attempt them. And I also knew that in case I was running out of time, I have a higher probability of answering the 1 markers because they take lesser time, and they're usually not that difficult to grasp as well. So I think focusing your energy on the bigger questions is probably the best way to go about it.
So Shrey, I always tell in the class, ESS paper 1, it's all about the terminology. That's push you to get a 7 points. So can you tell how do you ensure that you are using a correct ESS terminology or terms in your paper 1?
Sure, sir. So one thing that Guru sir emphasized, I think innumerable times, during the entire 2 years of ESS, was to use the ESS textbook, right? The ESS textbook is like your Bible. And the reason for that is because if you do read the ESS textbook, I remember even now that every single important technical terminology, they used to give it in the margin, and they used to give definitions, and they used to highlight, and they used to give you, they used to tell you what is important. They should tell you what you're supposed to be studying. I think, in my opinion, ESS is more about understanding the why more than the what. What I mean by that is that you need to understand what causes and what affects things. It's not simply about what the question is and what the answer is. An example that Guru sir likes to use is eutrophication, right? So eutrophication is, you can say, what is eutrophication? It is the enrichment of stagnant water bodies with algae, which causes water pollution and biodiversity loss. But that is not enough for you to get full marks. In order to get full marks, you need to be able to explain why it happens. And why does it happen? It happens because if you can explain that it happens because of rich minerals which cause inorganic growth. For example, you have to mention phosphorus and nitrogen, which are the key ESS terms. That is how you ensure getting full marks. And Guru sir was able to explain this point to me very coherently, which is why I think I was able to score well in the paper 1.
Brilliant. Shrey, for me, the paper 1, the 6 mark is a very important one. It carries a 70% in overall score in the paper 1. So can you tell from your personal example, what method did you use to answer the 6 mark question on the paper 1?
Yes, sir. So because it's 6 marks, you have a lot of leeway. So I would suggest around 12 to 14 points, which Guru sir had told us, because that gives you more than adequate amount of space, and you're able to basically put across your views. And I think the way I was able to answer the 6 marker question was because I had a very good command over general knowledge. And I think a lot of times it boils down to like common sense as well, because some paper 1 questions can be solved simply if you are able to analytically understand what the question is asking. For example, you should be able to connect the questions to your own life. You should be able to put it in your own local context, and you should be able to say that, oh yeah, they're asking me something which is relevant to my own life. Like if you look around in your own community, a lot of the answers to the questions will be right there. So I think being able to connect ESS to your daily life is something that I have been able to do very well, and I think that is the short way of attempting the 6-marker question.
That's a real very good example. Shrey, you got a 7 in ES. So now from your experience, can you tell 2 tips to score 7 in the paper 1?
Yes, sir. So as I said, paper 1 is all about efficiency. And in order to do that, you need to be able to show them that in very little space, you understand and grasp the concept. You understand why they're asking the question. So I think it's important. You should be able to put yourself in the shoes of the examiner. You need to understand why they're asking the question. What do they want from you, right? So that's why you use technical terms. That's why that's why you have to break down the question, and you have to always be able to see what you're supposed to, what their motive is for you. So I think that is how you attempt the paper 1.
Brilliant, fantastic. Shrey, now we are moving to some of the question related to ESS paper 2. In what proportion you have given to write 3 parts of an essay question? Especially, what is the best way to structure all the 3 part of the essay question on the paper 2?
Yes, sir. So I know paper 2 is very daunting for many of the ESS students. However, for me, it was honestly my personal favorite, because the entire like freedom that you get while writing an essay question, I think it's unmatched in any other paper. For example, there was a time when I was not entirely sure, like I had not revised the chapter well enough, the chapter from which one question came, and this was not the board exams, obviously. It was one of the exams before that. However, because of my knowledge in economics and because of my knowledge in world affairs, for example, I was able to explain, and I was able to write a pretty good essay, because I think that's what really matters. It's the paper, the essay question is quite similar to your economics or English paper 1 essay, because it has to be structured in that way. You have to remember to give balanced arguments, and you have to be sure to make points that show that you are able to think critically. Also, most of the time, they will ask you to give your own personal opinion. Guru sir likes to mention that ESS is a lot like TOK. For example, they want you to be able to make your own judgments and make your own conclusions. So I feel that even though you have to give balanced arguments, you should also be able to, by the end of the essay, you should also be able to analyze both sides and tell which is the correct side. And you should be able to come to a conclusion showing your own opinion, which is a synthesis of the facts given in your textbook. So it's not just, verbatim writing what you read. It's more about showing them that, yes, I'm able to intelligently write an essay, because an essay is basically a reflection of your own thought. So if you're able to make good, arguments in your head, like suppose you're having a conversation with someone, I think that's what an essay really is supposed to showcase, and that's what paper 2 really gives you the freedom to do.
Brilliant. The opinion plays a very important role to get a 7 in ESS. So paper 2 always have a section A, and so is it advisable to work on a section B before you start section A, or vice versa? What is your personal example, Shrey?
So I think this is very personal. I think the only way you're going to be able to see which way to do it. I don't think you should take advice from other people, but see it over time. Giving exams, you should be able to see what works best for you. So in my personal case, I went with section B first, because this was the advice that my teachers gave me, and it's something that I also realized, because I tended to overwrite my answers, and I used to use up large amounts of sheets in writing the essay questions, for example. And I realized that while doing this, I was taking up a lot of time. So that's why I knew that section B used to take me a lot more time than section A, which is why I chose to focus all my energy and effort in writing, the bigger part first, because obviously, like even psychologically, it's a lot easier to write a big question when you have so much energy and when you have the, your blood circulation at the maximum. These are all the finer points that Guru Sir gave us, and they really add up by the end of the experience. So yeah,
brilliant. Shrey, as an examiner, as a teacher for the paper 2, all the students they always struggle for a 9 mark. So how do you structure a 9 mark question? And usually, how many real life examples you used to give to sufficient for a 9 mark question?
Sure, sir. So basically, for a 9 mark question, these are always very important questions for me, because as I said from my previous point, being able to structure your essay is the most most important, I think, because you should be able to give, an introduction which isn't too lengthy, but it should be able to show your main points that you're going to cover in the body. So around, I think 6 lines should be enough in the introduction. After that, basically, the body part, which is the main part, should show a balanced argument. It should show why. So they'll obviously they'll ask you something like, is it better to have an anthropocentric or technocentric view on a matter? And Guru says to give an example that you can write anything in your essay question, but you should always have the technical terms. So being able to make sure that you use a lot of technical terms, just use them everywhere, but they have to be relevant as well. You can't just use any technical term. So having that knowledge is important. And real life examples, I think, really save you, because many times they'll ask you using a named organism, using a named species or a named ecosystem. They'll ask you to justify something or explain something. So I think I was able to use Sir's website, Gurumantra.com, and I could see a lot of articles. I could, really divulge from the textbook and read a lot of examples in my own daily life. And I think the best way to prepare for these the 9-mark essay question is to just read and, watch documentaries, and you should just research very far and wide, because you never know what you read might help you somewhere. Because, for example, when I was studying my current affairs for getting into university, and because of my passion, we had the COP26, right? And Guru sir mentioned to me that because we had the COP26 going on, it's very important that something about climate could come, and you should be able to relate your real life to that. And a lot of questions from the atmosphere chapter did come in this exam. So I think if you are aware of what is going on in the world around you, writing a 9-marker essay question is quite easy, and it's quite enjoyable as well.
Correct, Shrey. General awareness plays in very important. So can you give, Shrey, 2 tips from your experience, especially for DP1 and 2 ESS students, to achieve a grade 7 in the paper 2?
I'm sure, sir. So basically, the way I used to practice for my ESS paper 2, I think I did practice a lot more for paper 1, because of the fact that it requires a very specific and technical ability, which is to, from very small sections of the textbook, they could ask you questions. So paper 1, obviously, you should be able to, very technically and very finely study. However, for ESS paper 2, I think the most important is to read the textbook, because from length to length, you should be able to read the entire paragraphs. Don't go for PPTs and notes. At least that's my own personal advice, because while they are very important, they are also structured in very big paragraphs, and those big paragraphs give you an idea of what is important and how much you're supposed to explain something. Because when you study from a PPT, you only get pointers for everything. You don't understand how much you're supposed to be mentioning. So I think in order to get a 7, you need to be very well versed with your textbook, and not in the mugging sense, but just you need to be able to enjoy reading, because I think reading the textbook itself gave me a lot of insight and knowledge, which I was able to build upon with my further research. So you should, as an ESS student, you should be very curious and inquisitive, because everything you read about in the textbook applies to you in real life. It's not just environment, and your environment does encompass, society in general. So ESS is very interlinked. It's at the core of everything, for me at least. So,
Shrey, next we move on to the ESS IA question. But before I move on to ESS IA question, I have one important thing which I always say in the class. I hope you know about it. ESS guide. I always emphasize on the ESS guide. So, can you tell how ESS guide helped you to score a 7, especially in paper 1 and 2?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that, and I'm glad you also told me why we're supposed to study from the guide. So, the way IB exams are set are they're used. The examiners, like the people who set the papers, they're external, and they do not have any one sort of reference. They don't have Guru Sir's PPT, or they don't have a textbook, right? They have only one singular reference in order to structure all their questions, and that is the IB subject guide. So these are like university level professors or even higher, and these people, they only have this one document in order to make the questions. So I think the subject guide, if you're able to dissect it and if you're able to understand what IB requires, should be able to hack the exam in a way, because you should be able to tell that, while the textbook might focus on one thing, the subject guide might focus on another thing. So while the textbook is important, and it was the most important for me, reading the subject guide at least once or twice beforehand, I knew that there are some things that IB is trying to emphasize to us. So that is what the subject guide entails.
Yes, you have to dissect the subject guide. So I have some couple of questions IA. So I still remember, Shrey, I hope you also remember about your ESS IA every
week. I can never forget my IA process.
IA class, everything. But of course, that hard work you paid for it, you got a 7. So Shrey, can you tell, how do you decide whether to write a IA based on primary data or secondary research IA?
Right. So times have changed now, obviously. At that time, because of the COVID pandemic, using secondary data was the smarter option. However, I do know a few people who chose to do sample IA, to do their own primary research, and a lot of people did their own project-based IAs. But I chose secondary because I believe that's my strongest skill set, and being able to use secondary research means you have so much of infinite resources that are there for you, and you can actually, on a very macro level, you can analyze factors, and you can come up with things that are very relevant to the world and locally as well, because you are using data which is given for decades, and you can use government records, you can use publications, news, media, everything. So I think I chose to go with secondary data only because it was an enjoyable process for me, and it was very convenient for me to take secondary data.
Good. What difficulty did you face during your ESS IA project? How did you overcome it? Can you tell your personal story?
Yes, I actually did not know what the IA and the extended essay, for example, were. I didn't know them very specifically. I knew that they were these essays that you had to write, but I didn't realize how different they were from the essays that you're supposed to write in your exams, for example, right? So I would always score highly in the exam because of my study methods, and I knew how to attempt a written paper exam. And I remember my teachers had come to me and they had raised this point with me that even though you are working hard and studying for your theory papers, your IA is something that is going to be very beneficial to you if you work hard and perfect it. So I didn't really pay that much attention to them, but I started to understand what the IA was later, and that's when I realized how important the IA was, because I could see from previous people, I could see how much their IA used to help them in pushing them from one grade boundary to another. I think the IA was monumental in pushing me from a 6 to a 7, and I think that the IA really helps you solidify your grade, and that's why you should never substitute the IA, and you should never discourage yourself from working towards it.
Brilliant. So, Shrey, can you tell how a student, ESS student, need to choose an ESS IA topic? Aside from being a global significance involving environmental issue, there are so many options to choose them. So, how ESS students have to properly select an IA topic?
Sure, sir. So, I think the most important thing that a lot of people kind of misrepresent is that they look at sample IAs and they'll see that, okay, there are a lot of samples on this particular topic, and then they'll do the same topic but using a different country, or they'll use some, different indicator. And I think the reason why a lot of those IAs might not be the best is because there's no personal motivator, there's no personal genuine interest in that topic. And I think having that drive and having that inquisitiveness only comes when you really want to get to the bottom of something, when you actually want to know, when you actually want to find the answers to the question that you're looking for. So I think a research question that really speaks to you personally, I think that is the biggest contributor to a good IA, and that is basically how I chose my ESS IA topic, because I did mine on a water pollution based IA. Mine was basically how nitrate levels in the Ganga water were affected over a period of time, and there were no samples for me based on like water based IAs, water pollution based IAs, but I was still able to do it only because I was able to apply the knowledge that I got from the samples. I was able to apply it into my own thing, and having my own personal drive to find out why this was happening is what caused me to write a good IA.
Brilliant. So 2 tips for DP ESS student to get a grade 7 in ESS IA from your experience.
Guru sir, I remember for like the last 3-4 months of the IA process, you used to take every week, you used to take extra classes. and used to you probably gave us like 200 tips, and I think 2 tips is a little difficult, but I'll try. So I think the most important thing that you can do is have a very highly focused research question, and you should be able to follow like the sample IAs, like the sample IAs which Guru sir has put in his ESS Gurumantra site. They were basically the Bible for me, because I was able to use them and I was able to emulate them in my own IA. Because a lot of times when I was stuck and not understanding what I was supposed to do, by looking at those IAs, I understood that okay, here is a blueprint through which I can basically do this in my own context. So I was able to do that. I think you should never discount modification, real life examples, and an application, because at the end you're supposed to find solutions to the problem. You're not just supposed to regurgitate something that you've read. You're not supposed to copy some other research paper online. You're supposed to find out how you're supposed to improve said thing. So I think another thing that I did in my IA was I used a lot of analysis and interpretation. So I used a lot of statistical data, and I used a lot of maths in my IA, and it wasn't very difficult, honestly. There was a lot that the computer did for me, but I think having that is very important, because it gives you justification, it gives you backing for your conclusion, and being able to evaluate that conclusion later becomes much easier. So I think don't shy away from using maths in your IA. That's another tip I would give.
So Shrey, I have a last couple of. Can you tell what are your tips for taking a notes in the ESS class, as a subject can be heavy content?
So I definitely believe that taking notes makes it very easy to solidify your understanding of topics. And by the end of my 2 years, I had enough handwritten notes that I was very efficiently able to cover my syllabus in a matter of 2-3 days. Because let's face it, you're not going to be able to study 2 hours, 3 hours every day, or at least with my packed schedule, it was very difficult for me to, have that utopian dream. And I think a lot of people, sometimes will say misleading things and be like, okay, you have to be very consistent and you have to study every day in order to get a good grade. And while this is very unconventional, I think what worked for me was note, because I think I was able to make very good notes while I was in class and while I was learning the topic. So every single formative or summative assessment that I had, the little parts of the syllabus that I covered, I used to make notes for only that part. And over time, after the 2 years, I had so many notes that I didn't need to go over the entire textbook again, only for something that I needed specific details. So I would open the textbook, because my notes, I was able to I was able to depend on them for everything. So that makes it very efficient and convenient. And so I think you should definitely take notes in ESS, and they will save you in the long run. Yeah.
That's a brilliant. As a topper in the ESS class who got a 7 point, what difference you have seen preparing for the ESS paper 1 and paper 2?
As I said, paper 2 definitely requires more command of social studies in a broad spectrum. Since our environment is so encompassing, knowledge of economics, politics, history is only going to help you during your course. So I think that is the most important when it comes to paper 2, which is being able to read widely and be able to have conversations with people who are interested and who are important in shaping the future of the world, for example, because that is basically, I think that is what ESS paper 2 wants from us as students. Paper 1, on the other hand, I think that is more for the analytical side. So I think that is for someone that is for them to be able to see from data, if you're able to analyze it and apply it using your knowledge from the textbook. So I think paper 1, a lot of times when I didn't know the exact answer, by reading the questions and by seeing the graphs, for example, I was able to figure it out using common sense. And that is the thing that I think is most important, because you shouldn't think that, I'm stuck because I didn't read this chapter, or I don't remember what I read in the textbook. You should have an open mind and you'll be able to solve everything that you come across.
Brilliant. Say, how did ESSGurumantra.com help you to get a 7 in the ESS?
Sir, without ESS Gurumantra, I don't think anyone would have been able to manage, and you made it way too easy for us using this website. I remember me and Guru sir used to talk about monetizing his website. I used to keep telling him, sir, what is this? Why are you giving it for free to the entire batch? You need to really get some ROI because of how much effort that you've put into it. Because I think there are 20 pages with more than 100 sublinks. You can see documentaries, you can see sample IAs, sample extended essays, articles, you get technical terms, you get entire list. So I don't know what all dodgy stuff sir must have done to get his hands on all of this, but I thank sir for all the effort that he's put into it. Definitely the website is probably what saved me during most exams, so thank you so much, sir.
So I have a last question. Shrey, can you again tell where you are going, which country you are going, what you are going to do? With 2 tips for DP students to write a perfect college application.
Yes, sir. So basically, the university that I'm going to is ranked second in the world for international relations.
Wow.
And basically, it's very highly focused on social studies because we do 6 disciplines. So it's economics, politics, history, law, sociology. So geography, right? So I think that I chose a university which really resonated with me because as you could tell from my answers, I believe that social studies in general, like having a knowledge about other subjects, really does help you with your ESS preparation as well. So I think one thing that you should do is you shouldn't just look at universities that people are telling you to apply to, or just for the sake of it, because everyone applies to these universities. You really need to think about what is best for you. And my advice to people would be is never discount yourself, because I really I didn't believe that I would get into Sionspor, and the fact that I got into this university is only because people like my college advisor Neena ma'am, they my friends, they told me that what's the worst that will happen if you do apply. So I think they really encourage me to stretch myself and reach extend my boundaries, which is what I think everyone should do with their college application. And I wish the future batches good luck, and I hope I was instrumental in developing them as ESS students.
Yes, you are definitely Shrey. Listeners, now you must have got to know his public speaking skill through his answer. That is Shrey Sharma. Shrey, thank you very much for taking your time and coming and enlightening your answer to all the DP ESS teachers and also students. And behalf of the Gurumantra podcast, we thank you for your endeavor future.
Thank you so much, sir. It was an honor to be in the podcast.